That was a lovely park.
I got breakfast too. I got breakfast.
Breakfast and lunch. Brunch.
Oh, thanks, Vicky. That's great.
Would everyone please take their seats?
Okay, guys.
Where's that from?
Everyone is everyone.
Oh, wait, she'd make a yellow.
It's the big breakfast and the takeaway version.
Oh, right. Tomorrow I went to
some?
See you all the lunch.
Right.
It smells divine.
Right, thank you. Welcome.
Hi. Kia ora, everyone. The Spreydon Heathcote Community Board submission on the annual plan. Mel and I are going to share responsibilities for presenting it to you. I'd just like to comment before I start that the process this year wasn't as successful as last year in terms of getting the residents in. Last year we had 2 meetings, one of 35 and one of 50 residents, and both of them were reasonably stroppy. And this time we managed to get only 12 in. And one of the 12 actually asked me at the meeting if our submission on the annual plan would reflect the comments that had been made at the meeting. And I said, yes, it will, to the extent that we also know what some residents outside of this meeting think, and there's only 12 people here. First of all, in general comments, our ward has been consistent in its opposition of sale of council assets, and it has been spoken about at many a meeting, and the meeting specifically to discuss the annual plan was no different, and we have very few voices raised in support of selling council assets at any meeting that we attend, and it is a consistent refrain in our ward. Water. I don't think anything's changed in the 30 years I've lived in Canterbury in that water is the most important thing to Cantabrians. They are very proud of their pure, clean, clear water everywhere it is and everywhere we are. And I don't think we could make a submission without commenting on water, and I think Christchurch should speak louder on the topic. I think that they should be telling the unelected ECAN and the partially elected ECAN in the future that water is more valuable to its residents than the pure chemical, whatever it contains. It has a spiritual value to the people of Christchurch and Canterbury, and we should be fighting for it in every way that we can. I also have a particular concern this year that dairy farmers who are broke will have even less wherewithal to be able to counter the pollution of the waterways around them, and that the situation may well get worse this year. And I think we should be addressing that to ECAN as well. We have always supported disability access. I'm disappointed that many buildings in the rebuild, and those that in particular that are 3 stories or less and will house fewer than 70 people, do not have to have lifts, just for example. And I know Liam has mentioned before the fact that getting into a building is one thing, being able to hear if you are deaf in terms of having loops installed is another, and she's quite right, we shouldn't always go on about access, but it is a fact that if disabled people can get into a building, they can then fight for the other things that give true disability access in that building. And the fact is there are a whole bunch of buildings in Christchurch in the rebuild that cannot provide services or employment to disabled people, and that's a shame. Having said that, we are delighted that 20,000 is in the annual plan for Barrington Park Playground to increase its accessibility for children with disabilities, and we'd like to see more specific projects like that in the future. Finally, in my introduction, the board recognises the significant loss of access to aquatic facilities for residents in the eastern suburbs. The Linwood swimming pool lies outside our borders, but is very important to people in Waltham, St Martin's and so on, Opawa, and they will be using it. But secondly, the principle of children in particular and families in general having access to water and aquatic facilities is very, very important. And notwithstanding the swimming pool is outside our border, our board believes that we should always be seeking to provide access to children in particular, but all ages, to water and swimming pools. Melanie.
Thank you. You'll know that our board puts the Heathcote River as a top priority. We've been supporting the Motherwell cleanups that happened last weekend. We're concerned, and residents are concerned about the Mid-Heathcote Linear Park Master Plan being slowed down since the earthquakes. There's sewage overflows obviously still going into the river at times, but in particular the annual plan has set only 120,000 for the next 10 years towards that plan, which seems to us to not really be enough, and we'd rather that money is spent earlier rather than later, so it's front loaded, so that people can start seeing improvements to be made, especially around flooding, but of course around the beauty of it as well. Street renewals, which have just been mentioned with Shirley Papanui. Grange Street, as I've been told, was at the top of the list in February 2011, and the residents have worked for 10 years to get it to that point to be renewed. If you go down that street, you will see that it doesn't look too good at all. We would like that to be worked on and money put towards that. Ward Street is in Addington. That street is quite wide and curves and is used as a racetrack by people trying to avoid going down Selwyn Street and other streets. Even last night I met a lady who had been hit by a car coming across the road when she was cycling on the other side. That's how people take that road. So it needs to be slowed down and worked on. Even a white line in the middle of that road would actually be very helpful. Right turning intersections, which are obviously an issue all throughout the city. Any intersection you go through, you will see people running red lights. It doesn't matter where we are because there are no right turning arrows, well, you know, not as many as we would like, but in particular in our ward is the right turning intersections onto Cashmere Road and Centaurus Road, coming from Worsley's Road, Hackthorne Road, Dyer's Pass Road, and people are just too scared to turn right, so it needs to be looked at and something added to the plan for that. There's also, of course, right turns onto Hallswell Road as well, very difficult. So obviously as traffic gets busier with developments outside of or Hallswell area and other ones up the hill, these will just get worse and worse, so they really need to be attended to. Community facilities. There is a lack of sufficient meeting spaces and community facilities in general. In Spreydon Heathcote, that work's been carried out by community development advisors. We would like to see more spaces made available, and I do realise that there's work happening with a specific staff member that's actually mapping all those facilities across the city, I believe. But we would like some money put in to help support as well the former Children's Library on 90 Hoon Hay Road, because that probably will need large upgrades in the future as that becomes more used. Where are you going?
Could I just say that the Children's Library building was on the for sale list, and Mel here letterboxed 1,200 houses in Hoon Hay to say that this was a facility that was possibly going to not be available in the future, and we received large numbers of expressions of interest, and from that Mel's initiative has come a residents association that has now taken guardianship of the Children's Library at 19 Hoon Hay Road, and so we've established a new residents association in that area, a very strong residents association, as well as a group looking at further uses, as well as expressions of interest from a large number of other groups in using that facility. Hoon Hay used to have a working men's club, it has nothing now, and this has been fortuitous that Mel put the energy in at the right time. You're going to mention Cemetery?
Oh, do you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Janet behind us is in support of a Sydenham Cemetery and Summerfield Park landscape plan, as well as the Summerfield Residents Association. So we would like provision for a plan to be made. The Opawa Adult Library, which is something that Carolyn's been supporting, those volunteers who have been waiting incredibly patiently to find out what's happening. We've been informed that work is to happen on repairing it, but there's no clear statement of that within the annual plan. There's no line that says Opawa Adult Library, and we would like to see that so we can feel confident that we believe it, not that we don't trust staff, but it would be nice to have the line there like it is for all the other buildings.
And the community, the Opawa Adults Library and Children's Library Committee, who have been so hard working on this issue, very much want to see it identified in the annual plan as being done, and be able to see it in the annual plan. There is nowhere where they can see work being done on the adult library. On this weed killer, we were surprised to see proposals come out asking the community to discuss using non-poisonous methods in the suppression of weeds, because this last spring I raised with staff, including the contractors, the issue of poisoning, because there was poison everywhere this last spring, including in parks where there would be runoff into the rivers, and at Ngāpunawai, just south of the AMP showgrounds, and the poison had access to the water. Our board's very much in support of this. It was raised by a residents' association, and we support their raising of it, and we very much support the proposal, and we'd like to see far less poison than was apparent last spring. Finally, we'd like to thank Council for the completion of the memorial at Waltham Memorial Gates. There's 6,000 left in this annual budget, and we look forward to seeing the grass sowing and the plantings that will come from that 6,000. For the last 2 years we have laid a wreath at Waltham Memorial Gates and have been joined by 15 residents who have read out the biographies provided by the librarians of men from Christchurch who went to the First World War and what happened to them. One bloke had been downgraded from corporal to private 16 times, so he must have been promoted 16 times too. And he was downgraded 16 times and was close to being charged with desertion when he was finally wounded and sent home, where he was safe and was not killed in the war, but then he promptly fell off a footbridge. So I've got a feeling that he might have had ingested a few of the nutritious substances that we all do from time to time. Finally, we oppose the Lincoln Road widening. The widening of roads as a reaction to increased traffic is unending. And Brougham Street intersection destroyed the suburb of Waltham, historic suburb of Waltham in our ward, and the widening of Lincoln Road through Addington has the potential to destroy Addington. We believe that the old founding suburbs of Christchurch should not be destroyed by widening of roads and increased traffic to allow people who live in the Sylvan suburbs to the southwest of us to get to work in 15 minutes. They should know, if they live in those suburbs, that they either take public transport or they bike or they expect to be in their vehicles for 40 minutes, because we are not going to sacrifice the inner city suburbs to get them there quicker. And that's it. Thank you.
Well said. Okay.
76 million?
Yeah, no, Tim, Phil, Andrew, Glenn.
Thank you. I'll just concentrate on one because I know Phil's got a few things, but
It's a surprise.
I know. I'm going to be very well behaved, but I just really want to just emphasise the work that Melanie did for 90 Hoon Hay Road, and it's absolutely fantastic what you've done there. And interesting to see, and the biggest concern really I have is a difference of opinion between the staff here, as in this building, and the comments made to the staff in the service centre, the community board and the councillors. And this actually shows that when you have a building...
That's Carolyn's phone.
Bloody duck. Yeah, should have shot it.
Sorry,
Tis the season.
Tis the season.
But in all seriousness, that is a real concern, because we've got a community that has felt so strongly about a building. And Melanie, the work you've done, I can't emphasise how amazing it is. But that's my biggest concern, is there is a disconnect, it seems, between some of the staff in this building, and I say some, and our community board staff, our community board and its councillors. So I just want to, there's got to be some work done there, I think. Thank you. But
Thanks, Tim.
I'll let the rest
So, thank you. Tim has alluded to concerns we both have, but I just want to clarify, just to make sure. I think, Carolyn, you mentioned that in addition to the Hoonhay Children's Library, that previously there had been, in terms of a community facility, there had been the Hoonhay Workingmen's Club, but that's now closed. So I'm just checking, do either of you know of any other community facility in Hoonhay?
Well, there is the Downing Street Church.
Downing Street Church?
Yeah. But there's no community facility at all.
Okay, thank you, that answers that. And then the other thing I was just going to ask you about, in terms of the Heathcote master plan, is given that there's a prioritisation for flood mitigation, is it possible that what the board might want to focus on now around the plan might be to prioritise what actually happens along the river itself, and right in that riparian sort of strip?
Yeah.
For example, including, besides flood mitigation, that there be a way to actually start cleaning up the river as well. I'm just wondering, is that something the board would also be prepared to focus on?
We had a reasonably stringent discussion with staff about priority for the Ernley Walkway, for example, where the board's emphasis was on planting of the riverbanks to help flood prevention and to mitigate against the kinds of floods we had 2 years ago, which destroyed the riverbanks and endangered the river in terms of slippage. If we don't get on to those kinds of things quickly, we're going to be in another situation with climate change where the riverbanks are threatened again. And this is lost money. This is absolutely lost money. So we think that this should be our emphasis. The trouble with 120-odd thousand a year is that by the time we get to the end of the 10 years, it's going to be worth nothing. And, you know, this was our major plan before the earthquakes, I know, and things do have to change. But the river, its health and its impact on our citizens was our major work. And we're now down to 120,000 a year, which is barely, it's not anything that's going to be able to redesign it or change it in terms of safety and protection or beauty for the citizens.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Andrew?
Thank you. I just want to focus a little bit more on the points raised around 90 Hoonhay Road. So that property is currently closed, obviously.
No.
So it's open.
The keys are available to certain people, and it will become bookable in beginning of July once all the details are sorted. So staff have been very good with helping the lease arrangements around that, which has been surprising to some people, but it will be opened. It just doesn't have full facilities. There's no kitchen facilities, all those things. It's a very simple building. Yeah.
It's tiny.
And
it's
it would
53 square metres.
So what's required? So the 40,000 that you're talking about would be for a repair and upgrade of that facility?
We didn't mention a dollar amount. We're just saying that we would like to sort of think about into the future if anything needs to be done, and it will need to, like kitchen fit outs, accessible access into the building and into the toilet and all those sorts of things that people are going to be wanting, because it will become, there's huge demand now. It will be, and there's lots of people that would like to actually have a bigger facility as well, so it could be extended even, you know, because it's got a large piece of property at the back of it.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a lot of potential with it, but it's obviously going to require a reasonable amount of money as well.
So what capacity is there within the new residents group for potentially a a fund matching arrangement for community management of the facility, and for any upgrade to be essentially a partnership between that community group and the council, maybe with some volunteer labour and fund matching through funds that the community group would be able to raise.
Yep. I think, well, the committee's got about 15 people on it, which tells you something at the start. It's hard to know how much money they could raise, but I think that they would have the potential to do that. There's a lot of people that have talked about volunteer work, mowing lawns, painting on the inside, all sorts of things already that's been discussed over the last 6 months. People are really willing to chip in. So I think things could be worked as a partnership, definitely. I just, can't put monetary figures on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but certainly there's room for a conversation.
It isn't
by
even
the sounds
really
of it.
open yet, but I think once that builds, the momentum will increase.
Right, thank you.
I did like, there's no one else, just one other
Glenn.
thing. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Just my question to you, it's to you, Carolyn, over accessibility. Just the question is, how much interaction has either Disabled Persons Assembly or Barrier Free, in your knowledge, had with the independent hearings panel process?
I honestly don't know.
Over our district plan?
Yeah, you have these arguments, like I tried very hard to increase the access to Pioneer Stadium. The current car parking access to Pioneer Stadium for disabled people is 100 metres in the open. And people that come in vans and people in wheelchairs, etc., are faced with that 100 metres in the rain. I tried to get the access in the back door where there are 15 staff car parks.
Yeah.
I tried to increase the access for disability in the back area where there were 15 staff car parks, and I had initial agreement from the management of Pioneer, but then money got in the way. They would have had to change the door to make it disability accessible, and they said cost too much, and compliance was met, even though the front door is 100 metres away.
Are you aware the life mark provisions were removed?
Oh,
from
yeah.
the district plan?
Yeah. And these things worry me, because as you know, our board put a lot of work into disabled car parking. We did mapping of the disabled car parks. We look at disabled bus stops, etc., and I'm no expert here. But the minimum standards are different from the standards that we should be looking to meet,
Yes.
And but at the same time, I do accept that the council ain't got a lot of money, but I would like still to see the council put in place a process whereby the council doesn't engage, invest in, or partner organisations that aren't in disability accessible buildings.
Okay, well, we sent that signal in our district plan. It was explicit, life mark provisions, and it was removed.
I remember, yeah.
Look, thank you very much. It's much appreciated, and a lot of hard work has obviously gone into the submissions. We do appreciate it.